The rain drummed against the window of Adiza Mensah's tiny soul apartment, like urgent fingers trying to get in. She sat cross-legged on her bed, phone pressed so hard against her ear it hurt, her voice barely above a whisper. Zuri, I can't keep doing this, she breathed into the phone, her accent thick with exhaustion. Every single day I see him and my chest gets so tight I can barely breathe. Her sister's voice crackled across the ocean from Chicago. Adiza, you need to tell him or quit. This is killing you. Tell him what? Adiza's laugh was bitter. That I'm in love with my boss? That Kang Jun-seo is the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing before I sleep? That when he says my name in meetings, I have to grip the table to keep from shaking? She stood, pacing the small space between her bed and desk. He's engaged, Zuri, to Yura Han. You don't understand. She's terrifying, beautiful and cruel and powerful, and I'm just me. You're brilliant, and her work phone erupted on the nightstand, the sharp ringtone cutting through the night. Adiza's heart lurched. The screen glowed. Kang Jun-seo, CEO. It's him, she hissed. Hold on. She grabbed the phone with trembling fingers, switching lines. Her voice transformed instantly. Professional, steady, empty of everything she felt. Mr. Kang, good evening. Miss Mensah. His voice was velvet and steel. I apologize for the late hour. I need the Hanwha projections. The file won't open on my end. Of course. Give me 2 minutes. Her fingers flew across her laptop. She found the file, converted it, sent it to his secure email. Sent, sir. Should be accessible now. Thank you. Your efficiency is remarkable as always. The line went quiet, but something in the silence felt different tonight. Heavy. Expectant. Will that be all, Mr. Kang? Yes. Get some rest, Miss Mensah. The call ended with a soft click. Adiza exhaled, setting the work phone down, and lifted her personal phone back to her ear. She didn't notice the work phone screen. Didn't see that the call timer was still running. Zuri? Sorry, where were we? You were telling me about your impossible love for your Korean CEO. Adiza collapsed onto her bed, staring at the ceiling. It's pathetic, right? 2 years I've watched him. 2 years I've memorized the way he holds his coffee cup, the tiny scar above his left eyebrow, the way his voice drops half an octave when he's tired. Miles away, in his minimalist office on the 47th floor of Daehan Dynamics, Kang Jun-seo sat frozen at his desk. His phone lay face up before him, call still connected, her voice flowing through the speaker like a confession he was never meant to hear. I dream about touching his hand, Zuri, just once. I dream about telling him that he deserves to be loved by someone who sees him, not his company. But that's fantasy, and this is real life. Jun-seo's hand moved to end the call, then stopped. He shouldn't listen. This was private, wrong, but he couldn't move. If only he knew. Adiza whispered into the dark. If only he knew that someone in his own building loves him enough to break her own heart every single day just to stay close to him. In his office, Jun-seo's hand slowly covered his mouth, his eyes closing. He knew now. Before we continue, if you're already hooked, smash that like button and subscribe. Drop in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, what happens next will leave you speechless. Let's go. 2 years earlier, the elevator doors of Daehan Dynamics opened onto the 45th floor, and Adiza Mensah stepped out, clutching her tablet like a shield. Her first day. Her thick-framed glasses slid down her nose as she scanned the directory, her oversized cardigan hanging past her fingertips. Everything was chrome and glass and intimidatingly perfect. She'd fought so hard to get here. Full scholarship to Northwestern for her MBA. Top of her class. 6 months searching for international positions. Korea felt like a fresh start, far enough from Chicago that the memories couldn't follow. Her brother Kofi's funeral, her mother's medical bills, the suffocating weight of being the one who survived. The elevator dinged behind her. Excuse me. The voice made her turn too quickly. Her tablet slipped. Papers exploded across the polished floor in a humiliating cascade. I'm so sorry. Adiza dropped to her knees, frantically gathering documents, face burning. A hand appeared in her vision, collecting pages with calm efficiency. No harm done. She looked up. Kang Jun-seo was even more striking in person than in the company photos. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that seemed to calculate everything, a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. But his hands were gentle as he helped her organize the papers. First day? He asked. That obvious? She managed a shaky laugh. Everyone's nervous their first day. You're Adiza Mensah. Finance department, analyst position, Northwestern MBA, impressive thesis on emerging market integration. He handed her the stack, his fingers brushing hers for a fraction of a second. Welcome to Dehan Dynamics, Miss Mensa. He knew her name, her thesis. Thank you, Mr. Kang. He stepped into the elevator, then paused, holding the door. The finance department is 2 floors down. You're on the wrong floor. Heat flooded her face. Oh, God, Common mistake. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. Good luck today. The doors closed and Adiza stood alone in the hallway, heart hammering for reasons that had nothing to do with embarrassment. Her first meeting shattered any romantic notions about corporate life. The conference room was full of senior analysts when Yurahan entered like winter given human form. Everything about her was sharp. Her bone structure, her white Chanel suit, the way her heels struck the floor. She was also Kang Junseo's fiancée. Adiza had presented her quarterly report, voice steady despite her nerves. The numbers were solid. She'd triple-checked everything. This projection here. Yura's manicured nail tapped Adiza's laptop screen. You're off by 3%. Actually, Miss Han, if you account for the currency fluctuation in... Are you contradicting me? Yura's smile was ice. In your first week? The room held its breath. I'm explaining my methodology. Your methodology is wrong. Do it again, properly this time. Yura's eyes traveled over Adiza dismissively. Maybe spend less time on your wardrobe and more on accuracy. Snickers rippled through the room. Adiza's hands clenched under the table. At the head of the table, Junseo's expression tightened almost imperceptibly, but he said nothing. The meeting continued. Later, in the women's bathroom, Adiza met Minji Park, a Korean-American senior analyst with kind eyes and a knowing smile. Don't take Yura personally, Minji said, touching up her lipstick. She terrorizes everyone, especially women she perceives as threats. Threats? I'm nobody. You're smart, young, and Junseo helped you in the elevator this morning. People noticed. Adiza's stomach dropped. It was nothing. Papers fell. Minji turned to face her fully. Listen, I like you, so I'm going to be real with you. Kang Junseo is untouchable. His engagement to Yura isn't romance, it's a business merger. Her family, the Hans, they control half of Korea's tech sector. Venture capital, patents, government contracts, they're connected to people who make problems disappear. I'm not trying to. I know, but be careful anyway. Minji squeezed her shoulder. This place eats people who forget their place. Adiza nodded, but something stubborn flickered in her chest. She'd come to Korea to escape her past, yes, but also to build something, to prove that the girl who'd watched her brilliant brother die too young could still make something of. She sent money home to her mother every month, half her salary. The apartment was tiny, her wardrobe minimal, but she was here. She was surviving. Falling for her CEO was not part of the plan. But every morning, she allowed herself 5 minutes. 5 minutes to watch Kang Junseo through the glass wall of his office as he reviewed reports, his brow furrowed in concentration. 5 minutes to memorize the way morning light caught his profile. 5 minutes to imagine a different life where she was brave enough, worthy enough to tell him what she felt. Then she locked it away and became invisible again. That night, alone in her apartment, Adiza stood before the bathroom mirror. She removed her glasses, letting her vision blur, touched her natural hair, the tight coils she kept pulled back in a conservative bun. You're not that girl anymore, she whispered to her reflection. You're invisible. Safe. But her traitorous heart didn't believe her. Adiza arrived at work the next morning with her stomach in knots. She'd barely slept, replaying every word she'd said on that phone call, praying that somehow the line had disconnected, that Junseo hadn't heard her pathetic confession. The morning meeting started at 9 sharp. She slipped into her usual seat near the back, making herself small behind her laptop. Then Kang Junseo entered. His eyes swept the room with their usual efficiency, but when they landed on her, they lingered. Just for a breath, just long enough for her heart to stop. Something in his gaze was different, softer, knowing. He knew. Adiza's hands went cold. She forced herself to focus on her screen, on the agenda, on anything but the weight of his attention. 15 minutes into the meeting, the conference room doors burst open. Yura Han made her entrance in head-to-toe Valentino, her hair swept into an immaculate chignon. She was late, as always, and utterly unapologetic about it. She crossed behind Adiza's chair, and her hand, whether accidentally or deliberately, knocked Adiza's coffee directly onto her laptop. "Oh, how clumsy," Yura said, her voice dripping false concern. "Maybe if you spent less time daydreaming and more time paying attention, Adiza." The room filled with uncomfortable laughter. A few people looked away. Adiza grabbed napkins, salvaging what she could, humiliation burning through her. Junseo's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The meeting continued. Young-hee Kim, a 23-year-old intern, presented her proposal for streamlining the company's AI integration process. She'd worked on it for weeks. Her voice trembled with nervousness, but her ideas were genuinely innovative. Yura waited until she finished, then leaned forward with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That was adorable," she said, "like watching a child play pretend CEO." Young-hee's face crumpled. The data supports that you're out of your depth. This is embarrassing. You're a waste of a salary." Yura stood, circling the table like a predator. "Someone this incompetent shouldn't be taking up space at Daehan Dynamics." "Miss Han, that's unnecessary," Minji interjected quietly. "Is it?" Yura stopped beside Young-hee's chair. "Maybe she needs a wake-up call." What happened next occurred so fast that later people would disagree about the details. Yura's hand rose and cracked across Young-hee's face with a sound like a gunshot. The intern's head snapped to the side. A red handprint bloomed on her cheek. Tears spilled down her face, but she was too shocked to make a sound. The entire room froze. This was too far, even for Yura, even in a company where she ruled with impunity. Adiza's body moved before her mind caught up. She stood, her chair scraping loudly in the silence. She walked around the table with measured steps, her heart hammering so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Yura turned, eyebrow raised. "Something to say, Adiza?" Adiza stopped directly in front of her. For 2 years, she'd swallowed her words, made herself small, accepted every casual cruelty. Not today. Her hand rose and connected with Yura's face, harder than Yura had hit Young-hee. The crack echoed through the conference room. Yura stumbled back, hand flying to her cheek, eyes wide with shock and rage. "Touch her again," Adiza said, her voice steady and cold, "and it won't be just a slap." Absolute silence. Yura's face contorted. You just assaulted me." In front of witnesses. She whirled toward the door. "Security! Call security! I want this woman arrested. I want her destroyed." The room erupted into chaos. 2 executives rushed to calm Yura. Others stared at Adiza with mixtures of horror and awe. Minji appeared at her elbow. "Adiza, what have you done?" "What I should have done 2 years ago." Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline crashing through her system. She walked to her desk on the main floor and began packing her belongings with as much dignity as she could muster. Personal photos. Her coffee mug from home. The small succulent plant that had somehow survived her care. Security arrived within minutes, 2 large men with apologetic faces. "Miss Mensah, we need to escort you out." She nodded, chin high, even as her world crumbled. They were halfway to the elevator when a voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Stop." Everyone turned. Kang Junso stood at his office door, his expression unreadable but his presence absolute. "Miss Mensah, my office, now." Yura, still holding her reddening cheek, shrieked, "Are you serious? She assaulted me. I'm your fiancé." Junso's gaze shifted to her, and something in it made her step back. "My office, Miss Mensah," he repeated quietly. Adiza walked past rows of frozen colleagues, past Yura's venomous glare, past Minji's worried face. Each step felt like walking toward either salvation or execution, and she honestly didn't know which. The office door closed behind them with a decisive click. Adiza stood in the center of Kang Junso's immaculate office, her spine rigid, hands clasped to keep them from trembling. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Seoul skyline behind him. She felt small, exposed, like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. He circled his desk slowly, not sitting, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Do you understand what you just did?" His voice was controlled, but something simmered beneath it. "Yura's family has connections to prosecutors, judges, police commissioners. You could be arrested, charged with assault." "I know." Adiza lifted her chin. "I don't care. She had no right to." "I agree." The words stopped her mid-sentence. She blinked. "What?" "I agree." He moved closer, each step deliberate. "What Yura did was unconscionable. What you did was brave." "Brave?" Adiza laughed bitterly. "I just destroyed my career, my visa, everything I've built here." "No." He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woody and expensive. Yura's behavior has been escalating for months, years. But my hands are tied. The engagement contract between our families, the business mergers worth billions, the political connections, I've been trapped in a cage of my own making. His eyes met hers, and the intensity in them stole her breath. But what you did took real courage, the kind I've been too much of a coward to show. He paused. I need people with that courage. You're not fired. You're promoted. Senior analyst, you'll report directly to me. Adiza's mind spun. This made no sense. Why would you? Because I heard everything. The floor seemed to drop beneath her feet. What? Last night, the phone call, your conversation with your sister. His voice was gentle now, almost tender. The line never disconnected, Adiza. I heard every word. Blood drained from her face. Humiliation, hot and complete, washed over her in waves. He knew. He knew everything, every desperate confession, every pathetic dream, every secret she'd kept locked in her chest for 2 years. She turned to flee, but his hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. Wait. Please. Let me go. Her voice cracked. You've humiliated me enough. I've been engaged to Yura for 3 years, he said quietly. It was arranged by our families when her father invested in my company during a financial crisis. I was 28, desperate, watching my father's legacy crumble. I agreed to the engagement to save Dahan Dynamics. His thumb brushed the inside of her wrist, and she felt her pulse jump against his fingers. But I've never loved her. I've tried. God knows I've tried. I can't. He was close now, so close she could see the darker flecks in his eyes, the faint scar above his eyebrow she'd memorized from a distance. And then you walked into that elevator 2 years ago, apologizing for existing, and He stopped, jaw tightening. I haven't stopped thinking about you since. The professional boundary between them shattered like glass. This can't happen, Adiza whispered, even as she swayed toward him. Your engagement, her family, you said yourself they're dangerous. I know, but I can't unknow what I heard. I can't unsee you anymore. His voice dropped. And I don't want to. His phone buzzed sharply on the desk, breaking the spell. He glanced at it and his expression hardened. It's a message from Yura's father. He's requesting an emergency meeting, tonight. He looked back at her. Someone already told him what happened. They're coming. The weight of reality crashed back down. If you want to resign quietly, I'll understand, he said. I'll give you excellent references, help you relocate safely. Your visa, your mother's safety, I can protect those things. But if you stay... Adiza thought of her brother Kofi, who'd taught her to stand up for what was right, even when it cost everything. She thought of her mother's voice on their weekly calls, proud of the life her daughter had built. She thought of Young-hee's tears, of 2 years of swallowed words, of a lifetime of making herself small. I'm staying. Something fierce and bright flared in his eyes. Then we need to be very careful, he said softly. They're going to come after you now. 3 weeks passed like a fever dream. Adiza's promotion meant working directly with Jun Seo. Long hours in his office reviewing projections, strategy sessions that stretched past midnight, moments when their hands brushed over documents and lingered a second too long. The tension between them was a living thing, coiling tighter each day. He'd look up from a report and find her watching him. She'd turn from the window and catch him staring. Neither acknowledged it. Neither could afford to. People are noticing, Minji warned one afternoon, cornering Adiza by the coffee station. The way he looks at you, the late nights. Yura's been asking questions. There's nothing to notice, Adiza said, but her hands trembled as she stirred her coffee. You're a terrible liar. That evening was the annual Dahan Dynamics Gala. Black tie, executives and investors, the kind of event Adiza usually avoided. But Junseo had personally requested her attendance. I need you there, he'd said, and something in his voice made refusal impossible. She'd bought a dress she couldn't afford, deep emerald silk that hugged her curves. She wore contacts instead of glasses. Her natural hair, usually pulled back severely, fell in soft coils around her shoulders. When she entered the hotel ballroom, conversation stuttered. Across the room, Kang Junseo was mid-conversation with investors. He glanced up, saw her, and went completely still. His glass paused halfway to his lips. For 3 full seconds, he forgot to speak. Yura, resplendent in white Dior at his elbow, noticed immediately. Her smile never wavered, but her eyes turned to ice. An hour into the gala, Adiza escaped to the bathroom. She was touching up her lipstick when Yura entered with two of her friends, women with sharp eyes and sharper smiles. Well, Yura said, leaning against the counter, blocking the exit, don't you look different tonight? Miss Han, Adiza kept her voice neutral. Let me guess, you think this changes something? The new wardrobe, the contacts, the hair? Yura laughed, and her friends echoed it. You think he sees you? Adiza tried to move past, but one of the friends stepped into her path. You're a novelty, Yura continued, examining her nails. An experiment, something exotic to amuse him while he's bored with me. But when that boredom passes, and it will, you'll be gone. She moved closer, her perfume cloying and expensive. But I'll still be here. I'll always be here, because he needs me, my family, our connections. You? She smiled. You're replaceable. Something cold and steady settled in Adiza's chest. Then why are you so threatened? Yura's smile fractured. Adiza pushed past and left without looking back, but her hands were shaking. She found Junseo searching for her near the bar, concern etched across his face. Before she could speak, he took her hand, bold, public, deliberate, and led her through the crowd to a balcony overlooking the city. Are you all right? I saw you leave with Yura. She's right, though. Adiza pulled her hand away, wrapping her arms around herself. This is impossible. Your family, her family, the engagement contract. What are we even doing? This. He stepped close, cupped her face in both hands, and kissed her. It was desperate and tender, and 2 years of longing compressed into a single moment. Adiza's hands fisted in his jacket, pulling him closer, and he made a sound low in his throat that sent heat cascading through her. When they broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. Does that feel impossible? Junseo, I'm ending the engagement. I don't care about the consequences anymore. I can't. Junseo hung. They sprang apart. A young man stepped from the shadows, early 20s, with Yura's sharp cheekbones but kinder eyes. Jinho Han, Yura's younger brother. We need to talk, he said quietly. Now. Junso's jaw tightened. Jinho, this isn't... It's about my father, about what he did to your company 3 years ago. Jinho's expression was grim, about what my sister's planning to do next. Junseo looked at Adiza, conflict warring in his eyes. She nodded, stepping back. I'll wait inside. But Jinho shook his head. No, she should hear this too. She's already in danger. The words sent ice down Adiza's spine. Jinho led them to an empty conference room off the main ballroom and closed the door. My father didn't just invest in Daihan Dynamics 3 years ago, he said without preamble. He orchestrated the crisis first, sabotaged your competitors, manipulated stock prices, created the financial disaster that almost destroyed you. Junseo went rigid. What? He needed leverage over you, over this company. The engagement wasn't a rescue. It was a hostile takeover with a smile. Why are you telling me this? Because there's a clause in the engagement contract. If you break it off, his company absorbs yours. You lose everything, the company, the patents, your father's legacy, all of it. Jinho's voice dropped. He owns you. And Yura knows, Junseo said slowly, understanding dawning. She's been waiting for you to break it off. She's been funneling company money to offshore accounts for months, building a war chest. Jinho looked at Adiza. She wants you to be the reason he ends it. Then she takes the company and... His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went pale. What? Junseo demanded. Someone just triggered the alarm at Ms. Mensa's apartment. Adiza's apartment door hung open, one hinge torn from the frame. She stood in the hallway, Junseo's arm blocking her from entering, while he assessed the destruction inside. Every drawer emptied. Furniture overturned, her laptop smashed. Books torn and scattered like wounded birds. But it was what lay on her bed that made her blood freeze. Photographs, dozens of them. Her and Junseo on the balcony, kissing. Different angles, high resolution, time-stamped. And beneath them, a note in elegant handwriting. Leave Seoul, last warning. Don't touch anything. Junseo's voice was ice. He pulled out his phone, photographing everything, his jaw so tight she could see the muscle jumping. Adiza's legs gave out. She sank against the hallway wall, shaking. He crouched before her, hands gentle on her face. Look at me. You're safe. I won't let them hurt you. You can't promise that. Her voice cracked. They own you, remember? His phone rang. He answered, listened, his expression darkening. Understood. I'm bringing her now. He pulled Adiza to her feet. Pack a bag. You're not staying here. Listening. 20 minutes later, they were in an apartment she'd never seen. Modern, minimalist, in a building with serious security. His private space, he explained, separate from the penthouse he technically shared with Yura. Adiza sat on the couch, numb, while he moved through the space with controlled fury, checking locks, closing blinds. Let me see your hand. She looked down. Blood dripped from her palm. She'd cut it on broken glass without noticing. He knelt before her with a first aid kit, cleaning the wound with careful precision. His hands were steady, but she could feel the rage radiating from him. I won't let them hurt you, he repeated. I promise. You can't promise that. They own you. The words hung between them like an accusation. His phone rang again before dawn. She woke to hear his voice, cold and professional, in the next room. When he returned, his face was carved from stone. Yura's father wants a meeting. When? Now. The office of Han Tae-kyung was all dark wood and leather, the kind of space designed to intimidate. He sat behind his massive desk, a man in his 60s with silver hair and eyes like a shark. Sit. It wasn't a request. Junso remained standing. What do you want? To clarify expectations. Han Tae-kyung opened a folder, slid it across the desk. Your little distraction has become problematic. Inside were photos of Adiza, her apartment building, her mother's house in Chicago circled in red, her mother's daily route to work, time-stamped. Junso's blood turned to ice. Adiza Mensa came to Seoul to escape tragedy, Han said conversationally. A brother who died young, medical debt. She sends half her salary home to support her mother. Touching, really. Don't. The word was a growl. You have two choices. End whatever this is, marry my daughter next month as scheduled, or... He tapped Adiza's mother's photo. Accidents happen, especially to older women living alone. You would threaten an innocent woman. For power? Han smiled. Yes. Junso returned to his apartment 2 hours later, looking like he'd aged a decade. Adiza took one look at his face and knew. Tell me. He told her everything. The threats, the photos of her mother, the timeline, the impossible choice. You have to leave Seoul, he said, voice hollow. Tonight, I've arranged tickets, money, security for your mother. No. She stood. I won't run again. I spent my whole life running. Then I'll marry Yura. I'll give them what they want. He grabbed her shoulders. Just stay safe, please. She stared at him, betrayal and understanding warring in her chest. So what was the kiss? The promise? Just another thing you couldn't keep? I love you. His voice broke. That's why I have to let you go. Adiza pulled away, grabbed her bag, and walked out. She made it to the elevator before the tears came. Minji found her in a coffee shop 2 hours later, mascara streaked and hollow. What happened? He chose his company, just like she said he would. Minji's expression hardened. Then we make them think you left, but you stay, hidden. Why? Because we find out what Yura's really planning, and we take her down ourselves. Across the city, in a penthouse suite, Yura met with a man whose face stayed in shadow. It's almost time, she said, sliding an envelope across the table. Make sure the accident looks real. 2 weeks crawled by like years. To the world, Adiza Mensa had left Korea. Her apartment sat empty. Her desk at Daehan Dynamics was cleaned out. Even Jun So believed she was gone. Minji had shown him fabricated airport security footage, a plane ticket, everything. He was a ghost walking. He attended meetings without hearing them, signed documents without reading them. Wedding plans accelerated around him like a noose tightening. Meanwhile, Adiza lived in Minji's spare room, invisible, hunting. Got it, Minji whispered one night, her laptop screen casting blue light across her face. She had IT administrator access, one of the benefits of being senior analyst, and she just cracked Yura's private financial records. What they found made Adiza's blood run cold. Shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Systematic embezzlement stretching back 3 years. Millions funneled from Daehan Dynamics into accounts under Yura's control. But there was more. Look at this. Minji pulled up an old police report, sealed but accessible with the right credentials. 5 years ago, an employee named Park Soo-jin threatened to expose financial irregularities at Han Industries. 2 weeks later, she died in a car crash. Adiza's hands went numb. Accident? Brake line failure. Never fully investigated because... Minji clicked through more files. The lead detective was on Han Tae-kyung's private payroll. I'm next, Adiza breathed. That meeting with the man in shadows, that's what it was about. Another convenient accident. We need more than suspicions. We need proof that will stand up in court. Someone with legal authority to... Adiza's burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. I know you're still here. Namsan Tower, South Entrance, 1 hour. Come alone. J.H. Jinho. He was waiting in the shadows, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, looking younger than his 24 years. My sister's become a monster, he said without preamble. And my father created her, enabled her. I can't... His voice cracked. I can't watch her destroy more lives. Why help me? Because you stood up to her. Because you're trying to save Jun So-hung when you should hate him for letting you go. Jinho pulled out a USB drive. This has everything. Access codes to her private server, communications with offshore accounts, documentation of the original crisis. My father didn't just exploit Daehan Dynamics' weakness. He created it. Adiza took the drive with shaking hands. He embezzled from his own company first, Jinho continued, framed 3 competitors for insider trading, manipulated stock prices, built his empire on a foundation of fraud. And when Junso's company started to fail because of what my father did, he swooped in playing savior. This destroys your family. I know. Jinho met her eyes. But it's the right thing. They spent 3 days compiling everything. Financial records, emails, wire transfers, the sealed police report, communication logs between Yura and the accident specialist. By the end, they had irrefutable proof of fraud, blackmail, conspiracy, and conspiracy to commit murder. We need a stage, Adiza said, studying the evidence spread across Minji's dining table. Somewhere public, somewhere she can't make it disappear. Minji smiled slowly. The engagement gala, tomorrow night. Combined bachelor party, 200 guests, company executives, board members, press. Perfect. One problem, Minji said. Junseo, if he sees you before we're ready, I need to see him. Just once, to make sure he trusts me when it matters. Adiza walked into Kang Junso's office at 6 p.m. without knocking. He sat at his desk, staring at nothing, and when he looked up, his expression cycled through shock, disbelief, hope, and anguish in 3 seconds. Adiza? Her name was a prayer and a question. She crossed to him, heart hammering. He stood, swaying like he might collapse. Did you mean it? Her voice was steady, despite everything. That you love me? More than anything. But you left. You were supposed to be safe. She kissed him, hard and desperate, pouring 2 weeks of rage and grief and determination into it. His arms came around her like he was drowning, and she was air. When she pulled back, both breathless, she held his face in her hands. Then trust me, tomorrow night, no matter what happens, no matter what you see, trust me. What are you? Do you trust me? His eyes searched hers. Yes. Then I'll see you at the gala. She left before he could stop her, before her resolve could crumble. The next evening, the ballroom glittered with Seoul's elite. Adiza wore a black dress and a wig, face carefully made up to be unremarkable. She blended into the crowd of 200 guests. Minji was positioned at the AV controls, USB drive ready. Jinho stood near the stage with federal prosecutors in plain clothes and police detectives waiting just outside. On stage, Yurahan radiated in champagne silk, every inch the blushing bride. The trap was set. This isn't over, Adiza whispered to herself. Not even close. Yura's voice rang through the ballroom, amplified and honeyed. Thank you all for celebrating with us tonight. Junso and I are so grateful for your support as we embark on this beautiful journey together. At a table near the back, Junso sat rigid, jaw tight, playing his part, but his eyes scanned the crowd restlessly, searching. We're thrilled to announce our wedding date. Yura paused for effect, smile radiant. June 15th, just 6 weeks away. Applause rippled through the crowd. Then the screens flickered. Every display in the ballroom, the projection screens behind Yura, the monitors showing live feeds, even the digital menu boards, went black for 3 seconds. When they lit up again, they showed financial records, transaction histories, wire transfers to offshore accounts, shell company documentation, emails discussing eliminating problems and ensuring compliance. Gasps spread through the crowd like wildfire. Yura's smile froze. What is this? Technical malfunction. Not a malfunction. Adiza stepped from the crowd, pulling off her wig, her voice carrying through the shocked silence. The truth. She walked toward the stage with measured steps, powerful and certain. Security moved to intercept, but Junso was on his feet, hand raised. Let her speak. Adiza climbed onto the stage, standing face to face with Yura. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're seeing is evidence of systematic fraud, embezzlement, and blackmail spanning 5 years. Yura Han and her father, Han Tae-kyung, have stolen over $40 million from this company and others. Yura's father shot to his feet, face purple with rage. You have no authority, no right to. She has mine. Jinho appeared at the ballroom entrance with 4 federal prosecutors and a dozen police officers. I'm Han Jinho. I'm testifying against my father and sister. Everything you're seeing has been verified and submitted to prosecutors. Arrest warrants were issued this morning. Chaos erupted. Executives shouting, reporters surging forward, camera flashes like lightning. Yura's composure shattered completely. She lunged at Adiza with a scream of pure rage. Junso moved faster, catching Yura's wrist mid-swing. It's over, Yura. She struggled against his grip, then went still, her face contorting with something between fury and grief. You were supposed to be easy to control, she shrieked at him. Weak, grateful. But then she came. She pointed at Adiza with venomous hatred. This nobody who doesn't understand power, who doesn't know her place. I could have made you a king. Tears streaked her perfect makeup. We could have owned everything together. Seoul, the tech sector, the government itself. I never wanted power, Junso said quietly. I wanted freedom. Police moved in with handcuffs. Han Tae-kyung didn't struggle, but his eyes promised murder as they locked on to Adiza. This isn't finished, girl. My reach extends. To offshore accounts that are frozen, one prosecutor interrupted. To shell companies that are dissolved. To government contacts who are distancing themselves as we speak. It's finished, Mr. Han. They led him away in cuffs, his cold fury never wavering. Yura screamed threats until her voice went hoarse, fighting the officers every step. When the ballroom finally quieted, 200 pairs of eyes turned to Jun Seo and Adiza. He took her hand, publicly, deliberately, and faced the crowd. I was trapped by fear and obligation for 3 years. I let corruption flourish because I was afraid of losing what my father built. His voice was steady, clear. This woman, Adiza Mensa, showed me what real courage looks like. She risked her career, her safety, everything, to expose what I was too much of a coward to challenge. He turned to her, his eyes bright. I love you, and if you'll have me, I'm choosing you. Every single day, forever. Cameras flashed like stars. Adiza's tears came freely now. You already chose me. When you told security to let me speak, when you trusted me without knowing why, you chose me then. They kissed as 200 people watched, passionate and public, and finally, free. Minji appeared at Adiza's elbow minutes later, face grim. There's one more file you need to see. She pulled it up on a tablet. Communications between Han Tae-kyung and an associate discussing timelines, insurance policies, the line of succession at Daehan Dynamics. Plans for Junseo's accidental death scheduled for 2 weeks after the wedding. With Junseo gone, Yura would become CEO. The company would be wholly owned by Han Industries. Adiza's blood went cold. Junseo read over her shoulder, his face draining of color. You didn't just save the company, he whispered. You saved my life. 3 months later. The auditorium at the Seoul International Convention Center held 800 people, and every seat was filled. Adiza Mensa stood at the podium in a tailored navy suit, her natural hair styled in elegant twists, no glasses hiding her eyes anymore. The banner behind her read, Women in Tech Summit 2026, keynote speaker, Adiza Mensa, COO, Daehan Dynamics. Finding your voice when the world wants you silent, she began, her voice steady and clear. That was my reality for 2 years. I made myself small, apologized for existing, believed that invisibility was the same as safety. In the third row, Kang Junso watched with undisguised pride, his eyes never leaving her face. But silence has a cost. It cost me my authenticity. It cost others their dignity. And it nearly cost us all the truth. She paused, letting the weight settle. The moment I found my voice, when I stood up to cruelty, when I chose courage over comfort, everything changed. Not just for me, but for an entire company built on lies. She spoke about Young Hee, about standing up to power, about the terrifying and exhilarating moment when you realize you're stronger than your fear. The audience hung on every word. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. That evening, Junso found her on the rooftop of Daehan Dynamics, the same building where her journey had begun. The sun was setting over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. You were magnificent today. he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. She leaned into him, her hand covering his. We were magnificent. None of this happens without you trusting me. I should have trusted you sooner, protected you better. You did exactly what I needed. You let me fight. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights begin to flicker on like stars. Then Junseo stepped back, and when she turned, he was on one knee. Her breath caught. I should ask properly this time. His smile was nervous, hopeful, devastatingly tender. Not because of contracts or family pressure or business mergers. He opened a small velvet box. The ring inside was simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the dying light. Adiza Mensa, will you marry me? Because I choose you, every day, every way, in the easy moments and the impossible ones, when you're fierce and when you're vulnerable. I choose you. Tears streamed down her face as she dropped to her knees in front of him, cupping his face in her hands. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They kissed as the sun disappeared behind the skyline, two people who'd found each other in the most impossible circumstances and refused to let go. Yura Han and Han Tae-kyung were sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and conspiracy to commit murder. Han Jin-ho became a leading advocate for corporate ethics reform, working with international organizations to prevent the kind of corruption his family had perpetrated. Park Min-ji was promoted to Chief Security Officer of Daehan Dynamics, implementing systems that would prevent future internal fraud. Adiza's mother, Grace Mensa, moved to Seoul 6 months later, finally able to retire from nursing thanks to her daughter's success. She became a beloved fixture at Daehan Dynamics' community outreach programs. Daehan Dynamics, freed from corruption, expanded into 3 new markets and doubled its workforce with a specific commitment to supporting women and minorities in tech. And Kang Jun-seo finally learned that the strongest foundation for any empire isn't power or fear or control. It's love. The rooftop again, 6 months later. Night has fallen completely. Seoul spreads below them like a galaxy. Adiza leans against the railing, Junseo's arms around her waist, her left hand resting over his, the engagement ring catching the city lights. Do you ever think about how different things would be? She murmurs. If I'd remembered to hang up that phone? He laughs softly against her hair. Every single day. Regrets? Not one. He turns her to face him. That mistake was the best thing that ever happened to me. She rises on her toes, kissing him slowly, thoroughly, with the kind of certainty that comes from choosing each other every single day. Behind them, the city pulses with life and possibility. Their story started with a forgotten phone call and a whispered confession. It continued with courage and sacrifice and the terrifying, exhilarating decision to fight for what's right. And it ends, or rather begins again, with 2 people who learn that true strength isn't about power. It's about choosing love, even when it costs everything, especially when it costs everything.